Well, hello and welcome everybody to the Oil and Gas Retirement Planning webinar. I am Kerry Facer, founding partner of Warren Street Wealth Advisors, along here with my team, Justin Rucci, Emily Balmages, and Len Hanson. We are going to share with you what we've learned over the years in helping our clients retire from the oil and gas industry. So today we have steps for successful retirement. We're going to cover these right now, going through 1 through 8. I thought we'd share this. This is funny, but we're in a recession and maybe a smart time to buy. Are you leaving? Did she get fired? Layoffs, this is so depressing. Depression, we're in a depression, time to sell. We hear this all the time. It used to be water cooler talk. Now it's Microsoft Teams meetings talk, but it's should you buy or sell Chevron stock? And we will talk about that today. This is our team. We are fiduciaries. We work as one team for our clients. We have 4 of us on the call today to help you plan your retirement. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into this. Justin, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. So Justin's going to be covering for us the Retirement Handbook.
Thanks, Kerry. So we'll quickly walk through the steps on the Retirement Handbook, and then this is also available as a PDF if you want a reference copy after the fact. So the first 2 steps kind of go hand in hand, which is just making sure you have a plan to begin with. Going into something like retirement without a plan is obviously not something you want to try and do. Number 3, make sure you time your retirement correctly. So this could be making sure you maximize bonus payouts, vacation time, PTO, or just tax timing. Maybe you start a fresh calendar year and retire with a fresh start on taxes. Number 4 is if you want to retire early, just know it's possible. You don't necessarily have to wait until age 59 and a half, which is the IRS standard retirement age. We have people go as early as 55 sometimes. So there are ways to work around those penalties if needed. 5 is budget for medical expenses. So knowing what your retiree medical benefits are, what's available to you, and budgeting for how much you're going to have to pay for medical expenses in retirement is an important step in starting to plan. Say goodbye to credit card debt, probably self-explanatory, but you want to try and clean up your balance sheet as much as possible before retiring. And along those same lines is building up emergency reserves. We try to target at least 6 months of cash so that you have some emergency savings going into retirement. Building and keeping a budget is probably the most important thing you can do for planning retirement, because we don't know if you have enough saved until we know how much you need to spend each month. So we'll get a little bit more into that later on in the presentation. Weighing your options on Social Security. Emily's actually going to cover this a little bit in a few slides, but just know you have options to take it early as 62 and as late as age 70. And lastly here, invest for retirement. Take advantage of the 401k and the options available to you. We'll go into some specifics on that in a few slides, and just making sure you're diversified and tax advantage as much as possible. Number 3 on our agenda is to avoid the common roadblocks that we see. So I'm going to pass it to Emily, and she's going to go over those items.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to quickly run through these, and if any of these are relatable, you are not alone. Number 1 roadblock we see is failure to plan. And what I'd say on this is it's never too early to start, even knowing that life will change and that plans will change. And we've seen clients completely change their savings habits once a plan is in place, because seeing what saving today looks like 20 years down the road can be very motivating. Let's see. Lack of financial knowledge. This one is very common, and basically because there's so much to know and things like tax rules change frequently. This is where partnering with a trusted advisor can really help steer things in the right direction. Inflation is a big one. Even just 2% a year of rising costs can have a major impact over a 30 to 40 year retirement time horizon. So you want to make sure any plan includes any projections account for inflation. Tax burden, we all know this is inescapable, but there are some powerful strategies to reduce your tax burden. Many of those strategies are more powerful the earlier you start. Final common roadblock, procrastination. We can all relate to this one to some extent. Most people find financial planning topics boring, intimidating, or confusing, so often the to-dos fall to the bottom of the list. Social Security strategies, these are high-level strategies. Certainly every situation is unique, and if you have questions about your specific situation, we'd love to help you plan through them. You're probably aware you can claim between ages 62 and 70. You can collect while working, though your benefits may be reduced. if you are still working, and that there's a formula there. Full retirement age is currently between 66 and 67. Waiting until 70 can pay off. You are entitled to 8% per year delayed retirement credits for every year you wait between full retirement age and 70. There are spousal benefits and strategies around this. So if you are married, there may be some powerful strategies here, and you want to plan in coordination with your spouse. Underlying all the decision making here is health and anticipated longevity. If you think you may have a longer or shorter than average life expectancy, it may make sense to draw earlier or later. That ultimately is the deciding factor. Biggest question we get is Social Security going away? We do not think it's going away. Certainly the system faces some complex problems, but the problems do have legislative solutions. And we do think that Congress will provide the necessary fixes. I'm going to turn it back over to Justin for some basic investing tips.
Thanks, Emily. So some things to consider when investing. The first one is probably self-explanatory, but it's honestly the most important, which is controlling how much you're able to put away or save each month, because this is what will really make the biggest difference in your overall financial plan. Number two is being willing to take risks. So not just saving the money and leaving it in a checking account, but taking smart risks and being willing to put that money to work. Three is diversification, goes along the same lines as taking smart risk. It's not putting all your eggs in company stock or one basket or even one industry, and diversifying across multiple different areas. Lastly, or fourth here, tax code. We'll get into the Mega Roth in a couple slides here, but just taking advantage of the tax code and what options are in front of you. Rebalance is a common one that we see people tend to forget. They'll set their 401k up once when they start the job and then never rebalance. That's actually a really important step because it forces you to kind of sell what's done well and take some profits and then buy into what has been lagging while things are cheap. And then lastly, think contrarian. This is probably especially important today when there's a lot of hype around a lot of different things, is being able to think differently and avoid some of the hype around certain areas. So we'll jump into the backdoor Mega Roth, which is a strategy to allow you to save additional dollars into your 401k on a tax advantage basis for those that can afford and are looking to do so. 401ks have a kind of normal limit that most people are familiar with of either $19,500 or $26,000 if you're over the age of 50. But they also have another limit that most people don't realize, which is a total limit. Contribution limit, which includes not just your normal contributions, but also your company match. And if your company allows it, in which case Chevron does, after tax dollars. And that limit is $58,000 or $64,500 if you're 50 or older. There's a difference between after tax and Roth. This is a common confusion, is after tax is technically not quite as tax advantaged as Roth. So the Roth dollars are capped at that 19.5 or 26,000. And so those are the more beneficial of the two because the investments will grow tax-free. You don't get any immediate tax deduction in either case, but the main difference between after tax and Roth is how the earnings grow. The earnings in after tax grow tax deferred, where the earnings in Roth grow tax-free. So obviously if you have your choice between the two, you would choose Roth. If we go through an example of what you can do to totally maximize the 401k, is you can do 26,000 of normal either pre-tax or Roth contributions, assuming you're 50 or older. Your company will contribute about $8,000 if you're making $100,000 a year. That leaves about 29,500, or excuse me, that should be 30,500 of remaining contributions into the 401k. So you have a total limit of 64,500. You contribute 60 or 26,000 pre-tax, 8,000 match. That leaves 30,500 of remaining contributions into the 401k that could be contributed on an after-tax basis. And that's a new number for 2021. That just went up 1,000 for this year. What it looks like when you do that is if you have those after-tax dollars you contribute, what you most likely want to do is convert it into a Roth IRA as soon as possible, because that'll have that money change from growing tax deferred to growing tax free. If we assume you have some growth in between the time you contribute to the plan and the time you convert it, Your contribution is represented in this graph as the green section, and then any growth you accumulate in between contributing and converting is represented in that blue section. To be able to do the conversion with no tax, your earnings or the blue portion goes to a traditional IRA, and the contributions go towards a Roth IRA. This keeps your after-tax money in one bucket and your pre-tax money in another, and gets your after-tax money growing tax-free as soon as possible, and your pre-tax money growing tax deferred. Next item on our to-do list is to build your vision for retirement. I'm going to pass it to Kerry. He's going to talk about some of the lifestyle items for planning for retirement.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Yeah, one of the things we've seen over the years when we've sat down with our clients and finally helped them, get clarity or really, comfort and to believe the numbers that they have enough money to retire. It's a interesting transition to watch. And so one of the things we like to remind our clients about early on is start thinking about those things now, because you've been working for, many years, and now you've saved up enough. You hopefully have, the most majority of your debt paid off. And we want you to start thinking about what you're going to do now with this new time. And with this money that you're now going to be spending from your accounts. So hobbies, family time, travel, sports, learn, volunteer. Travel is probably the number one. And the other thing that comes up a lot is moving out of state. And so what we want to talk about is in retirement is the cost of living. And it's no surprise the coastal areas are the most expensive. You can see here, in the red, I think 7 of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these top 10 most expensive metro areas are in California. And so you see a lot of people moving out of state. And so a lot of our clients are considering moving out of state. And what we want to think about, though, when we move out of state is not necessarily the just the cost of living or the tax. Don't strictly be thinking about the finances, but is more in line with weather and relationships. And so if you have an area that you want to move to, and I'll go back a slide here, but if you have a city and state you want to go see and visit, we recommend you try a month in the summer, as you probably already have, but to go back again in the wintertime, because as we sit here in Southern California and it's January and we're complaining about the cold, in some of the states that our clients have moved to or want to move to, the temperature is much lower and the snowfall is much higher. And so we want you to really spend a month or two. And so what we encourage our clients to do is some travel during the good time of year and the travel during the difficult time of year to experience the winters, because the winters in some of these states can be pretty terrible. Now, the good news, though, is that when we do our planning for our clients, and we're relatively conservative in all our approach through helping our clients transition into retirement, what that means in this slide is that we have a long life expectancy. That's a conservative approach to a financial plan, because if we think we only need money for 10 years, well, then we can spend a lot more in the first few years of retirement. But if we're going to be living to be into our 90s, and if you're healthy and alive and well today, and you're listening to a retirement planning workshop, and you're between the ages, let's say 55 and 65, the odds of you living into your late 80s, early 90s are very high, because the average life expectancy is for all people, right? Not healthy individuals who are 55, 65 years old today listening to retirement tips. So the good news is we live a long time, and you can see here in the very top, North America has the longest life expectancy according to this, which was done back in 2018. So we want to put a conservative approach into our planning, so that way we never run the risk of running out of money and having to send a client back to work or doing any part-time work. That's just not what we want. Now, steps for a successful retirement. A couple of things we've built over the years. Len's helped us do this. By the way, if anybody's listening doesn't know, Len Hanson worked for Chevron for 24 years, was a stockbroker on the side, and then got into the business full time when he retired from Chevron. He's actually going to be jumping in here in a little bit to talk about the latest news that's happened with Chevron. But some of the things that he shared with us over the years of working with his friends at the refinery and helping them plan retirement is some of the pitfalls. And retiring too soon was one of them, and retiring without enough money was another. So we came up with 2 things that we give away. So anybody who wants this, we will give you a copy of this, but it's the toolkit and the handbook. And they sound very simple, but at the end of the day, if you go through these toolkits and these handbooks, you're going to be much better off and prepared for retirement than going without. So to cover this toolkit, Justin's going to jump back in and share with you what that looks like.
Yes, thanks, Carrie. So to Carrie's point, this is another document that we can get you a PDF copy of if you're interested. And this is really where I recommend anybody that comes to us for the first time and wants to know if they can afford to retire or start is this packet here, this retirement toolkit. The first section of it is just what we call your net worth scorecard. And we kind of just give you a template to fill out all of your assets, all your liabilities. And then of course you can do the subtraction on the bottom there to figure out if you subtract all of your liabilities from your assets, what your net worth is. And this is just a really good exercise, regardless of whether you're planning to retire, this year or in the future, just to get a good grasp of where you stand from overall financial picture. Once you've done that, the next section here, we usually recommend spending about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe at the most, just building a retirement budget. So if we have an idea of what your net worth is and what you have available in terms of assets, the next thing is to kind of look at what do we need in terms of expenses and income each month. And so we did the same concept here. We'll give you some common categories here to fill out for your retirement budget, and then total up at the bottom. Just use round figures, does not have to be down to the penny. The main goal of this exercise is to figure out how much you need to spend each month on an estimated basis and how we can compare that to your assets and income streams available. Next steps for a successful retirement, I'm going to pass it back to Carrie. He's going to talk about what it looks like working with us.
Yeah, so one of the things our clients, and Len actually brought this up, he attended another, a competitor of ours, retirement planning workshop many, many years ago, and he was still working at the refinery. And he shared that the advisor would not disclose how they earned money. And we've always done this being fiduciaries from the get-go. But we want to hold in here is what we charge. So on the first million is 1%. You can see the schedule here. Next million 90, next million or 3 million 0.75. On the bottom here, we put the friends and family pricing. A lot of our clients come through referrals. So we have our friends and family program, which is bundled pricing for up to 5 families. So if you're not referred to us, you start out at the 125 right there at the bottom. But as soon as you add another person to your friends and family, you do go to this schedule, and so does that person you refer. So if you have any questions about that, you can follow up with Lynn or myself, and we can explain it for you. But the bottom piece here is also something worth noting, 401k assist. So if you are not ready to retire, but you want help with your 401k, we have a program where we can actually view your 401k plan through a third-party service. And then once a year, we'll go through and build a new allocation and update that. But at any time you call us and you have questions about the markets or what's happening with maybe Chevron specifically, we have real-time access to view your 401k plan and then give you some recommendations or advice back. And we charge $400 a year for that service, and it's called 401k Assist. Again, questions on that, let me know or Lynn know. As far as our process go, wealth design, we have a 6-step process. Today, it's just an introductory call to who we are. But if you wanted to talk to us, you'd schedule a call with Lynn and talk about who we are. We go through discovery, planning, solutions, implementations, and of course, monitor and adapt. We have lots of text. This is how we're able to put everything in one place to view and give you solid recommendations. And as far as how we actually invest our money for our clients, so if you had an account with us, let's say you have some after-tax money, or you want to talk about a backdoor Roth, this would be an account that we would manage for you. And we have 3 positions that we actually trade in-house at Warren Street Wealth. A global stock position, a global bond, and a global real asset. We then take those 3 strategies to blend a custom portfolio for you that we can update and change at any time on the risk profile there at the top. So low risk, high risk, just depending on really it's your goals, objectives, the time horizon, and your risk tolerance. One thing we do want to add in here, and we asked about a lot, so I'm going to ask Justin to come back to a little bonus piece here we didn't talk about in the beginning. And then Lynn, I also want you to, before we head out here, give us an update for everybody who's listening, kind of the temperature, what's happening right now with people leaving. Obviously, it's been a very, I'd say challenging year, but specifically at the refinery. So maybe Justin, you cover this, and Lynn, give us a little update. And one of the big things, Lynn, I know everybody's asking you, and people on the call probably have a question about is, when should I retire? You know, should I retire now? Should I wait? And so if you don't mind sharing that, that would be great. Justin.
Yes. So just a couple of quick notes on company stock risk. to kind of wrap this up. We just want to kind of reiterate, because we see it frequently, is somebody will come to us and they have 100% of their retirement savings in company stock. And it's easy to forget sometimes that you're relying on this company, not just for obviously the money you'd saved and have in their stock, but you're also relying on them for your paycheck, your health insurance and benefits, their contributions, so your pension and their 401k match. So there's a lot of things riding on the performance of this one company. And so that's why we usually recommend that you don't have all of your savings invested in that same company as well. So we'll get into in the next few slides what some options are. Where we typically start is just reviewing what you have in ESOP holdings versus common shares. And we usually recommend reducing or potentially even eliminating entirely your common share exposure. We maintain the ESOP because it has the flexibility for some different tax benefits, mainly being NUA, or net unrealized appreciation at retirement. If you're not familiar with that, it's something we help people out with quite a bit, and we can certainly explain and walk you through it. But the main objective would be to try and keep the tax advantage shares as much as you can, reduce the common shares, and develop a overall asset allocation plan to get a little bit more of a diversified mix. Here is a bar graph of how the NUA works. So the left-hand side is if you did not take advantage of this strategy. So essentially all of the distributions from your account would be taxed as ordinary income, the same way it is if you worked and earned that money as a wage. The right-hand side shows the NUA piece, which allows you to have just a portion, which is your cost basis of the shares, which is typically very low. I'll let Len elaborate when I finish this slide, but typically very low cost basis is taxed as ordinary income. And then the capital gain piece, the green piece, is taxed at capital gain rates for long term, which is either 0, 15, or 20% if you're in the top tax bracket. For the vast majority of people, it's taxed at 15%. So depending on how your overall income is, you're likely going to see some tax savings by using this NUA strategy. And you only got to pay the basis up front, which, Len, is typically somewhere in the teens for per share.
$18 a share.
Yeah, so you pay a much lower tax. You pay tax on a much lower piece of your overall ESOP exposure.
So here we are now, we're getting to the end. Len, before we wrap up here, I know you have some updates or you can share some, but what's been going on? Obviously, it's been an interesting year, specifically for all of us, but at the refinery. So what can you tell some of the people who are listening now, and what are the questions you're getting that's going on out there?
First, I want to start with Carrie shortchanged me on my years. I had 24 years at the refinery, but a total of 33 years with the company.
I apologize about that, Len, but that's why we're financial advisors and we just fact check and get the numbers right.
That's all right. I retired at 55 just a few years ago. Basically, I'm hearing, everybody knows at the refinery that we had several layoffs, and some people raised their hand, said they're ready to go, but several people got let go. And so jobs, I'm hearing people are getting doubled up on their work. So it just seems a little different than what I remember working for Chevron. And if you're frustrated with what's going on, I understand. That's got to be tough when you've worked so many years for a great company. And I think there's still a great company, but it's just changing. So I'm hearing a little bit of frustration. And the earliest you want to probably think about going, if you are thinking about going, would be April 1st. April 1st, you start to earn off the bonus for 2021. You'll get that in 2022, even if you retired sometime this year. So April 1st, you start to accrue some of that 2021 bonus. If you leave before that, you don't get any of that bonus. So that's a date that you want to remember.
So if you're listening today, and by the time this gets out, on replay too for everybody, it's you're already at the end of January. You might as well stay 2 more months, is what it sounds like.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else? What's the best way to get a hold of you, Len?
Best way to get a hold of me? There's several ways to get a hold of me. I have, and I can't, pardon me, I can't remember my number at the office. I should know that. But my personal number is 310-422-4892.
Awesome. Yeah, reach out to Lynn if any of you have questions. He's been doing this for a long time and knows the benefits really well. One thing I do want to make available as a resource is the main line here as well. You can call and ask for Lynn as well, and we can get you a hold of Lynn to schedule some time. But as also, we built out a new page on our site. So if you go to warrenstreetwealth.com and go to who we serve, under there is oil and gas industry. There on that page on our site, you'll find the toolkit, the handbook, in addition to past webinars and a link to get a hold of Lynn as well. So I think we're all done here. So I just want to thank everybody for attending. And if you have any questions, please feel free to get a hold of us. And we will talk to you soon. Thank you.